I'm going to try my best not to preach.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you.
Within 11 minutes, Jasmine Crockett transformed a silent room into a national reckoning. She slapped a deep red folder down on the table, and the air stopped. Her mother was gasping for air. Elon Musk had sold the last ventilator. Trump was laughing live on air, but Jasmine did not scream. Her voice remained steady as she spoke truths that drained color from powerful faces. What was so secret in that red folder that made two billionaires visibly squirm? The red tally light flashed once, then clicked into place. Live feed, no edits, no do-overs. In room 214 of the Rayburn House office building, heat bore down. Not from the air on a July day or camera lights, but from anticipation so dense it settled like weight on everyone's chest. 22 names occupied the lengthy table, but one chair asked for the attention of the world. Jasmine slipped in. Like a knife through tension, her blue blazer reflecting light like metal. No flash of attention to the sea of faces, no nods of welcome. Simply heels on the floor twice before she sat down. Opposite her was Donald Trump, arms folded, tie skewed, smiling like an untouchable man. Next to him, Elon Musk hid in his phone, surrounded by quiet lawyers. Whispers circulated that they'd attempted to shut down the broadcast a mere 12 hours prior. Threats of lawsuits and hysteria, but Jasmine ensured the cameras kept rolling. She slowly opened the red folder. One crimson edge of paper was visible. A woman in the third row gasped. And then she said, "This isn't a hearing. It's a reckoning." The sentence landed like lightning. All the networks broadcast it. MSNBC, Fox, C-SPAN, YouTube, even TikTok Live. Around the nation, coffees were placed on tables and volumes were raised. Jasmine met the eye of the camera. "Before we proceed with today's proceedings," she stated, "I need to correct the record. There had been a concerted effort," she glanced at Musk, "to deep six what you're about to view." She wrapped the folder. "If they had, my mother would be deceased." Trump sneered. "Oh boy, here we go. Another drama queen." Jasmine didn't flinch. "Mr. Trump," she said with eerie coolness, "nothing about this is stage. Not when lives are lost while you and your billionaire allies reap profit from the breath they must take." Gasps. The camera closed in. Musk's smile faltered. A twitch gave him away. The House Oversight Committee seal towered behind Jasmine, golden and accusatory. It was not a courtroom, but what she held would sentence in hearts and in headlines. She set a photograph face down, then threatened, "In 11 minutes, I'll ask you both one question. You won't be able to lie, you won't be able to flee, and you'll wish you'd adjourned this hearing last night while you still could." The room buzzed. A CNN producer waved wildly off camera. One of Musk's attorneys wrote a note. He did not read. Jasmine sat still, rigid like a weapon trained on the conscience of a nation. Outside, there were protests. "Let them breathe" was written on the signs. Drone cameras captured everything. But within, the world saw the woman in blue. The folder still closed, the photo untouched. And one question now held America in its grip. What did Jasmine find that frightened Elon Musk's legal team into attempting to silence Congress itself? The silence did not last. Musk leaned forward, unruffled. "Let me be clear," he said. "Our distribution of ventilators was not political. It was AI-driven and based on predictive modeling. It saved more lives than traditional approaches ever could." He paused, waiting for nods, perhaps applause. But Jasmine merely turned a page. Her voice was soft but tempered like steel. "Saved more lives," she said. "Or just the more profitable ones?" Musk tilted his head. "Excuse me?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "I'd like to enter into the record the names of 17 Americans denied access to ventilators under your so-called optimization model." She raised a single sheet. Her tone precise, almost surgical. These weren't data points. They were teachers, veterans, grocery clerks, mothers, human beings treated like coding errors. The list drifted like smoke on the air. Trump grunted, another emotional monologue. "The weak don't build strong countries." The gallery did not laugh. Jasmine glared at him. "That's rich, coming from a man who took cover in a bunker during a protest." Trump brushed her aside, but even Elon looked sheepish now. "Congresswoman," he attempted. "Tough choices had to be made. Survivability, long-term production." It wasn't personal, it was efficient. Jasmine repeated the word like venom. Efficient. "Your algorithm placed my mother in tier 3. Non-priority. Not efficient enough to save." Elon stiffened. A lawyer muttered something cutting. He ignored it. Jasmine stood up, took out a picture, and pushed it across the table. Undefined, it fell directly in front of Elon Musk. Jasmine held up a photograph. "Is my mother March 28, 2021, Dallas County Hospital." The photo spoke volumes her voice hardly had to. Her mother, waiting in a corridor for 6 torturous hours, lacked a bed, a ventilator, and an answer, only a system that concluded she wasn't important. The gallery gasped. Trump leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "She lived though, right?" So what's the issue? Jasmine's response wasn't hot, it was chilly. Disappointment. Not everyone was so fortunate. And no one should have to bet for oxygen. She went back to her seat, presence still looming. Let the record reflect. She went on, voice unshaken. This is not about a single hospital or one billionaire. It's about a system that privileged breath and sold it off. Camera zoomed in, pen stopped moving, even the Fox News anchor in the back seemed shaken. Then Jasmine leaned forward into the mic and gave the question that brought the country to a halt. Mr. Musk, how many lives did your math determine weren't worth saving? The silence boomed louder than any response. The picture of Angela Crockett, oxygen mask removed, clutching a sign that read, "Still waiting," sat on the table, like a reproach. 3 months ago, Jasmine said softly, my mother stopped breathing. The room responded sharp breaths, moved chairs, dropped eyes. She fainted in the kitchen. I drove with the ambulance to Dallas County Medical. Her file opened once. More this time releasing a sheet, stamped confidential internal use. Eyes fixed on Musk. When we got there, they had no ventilators. A nurse handed me a clipboard and said, she's tier 3, you'll have to wait. Jasmine laid the page down and turned it to present to the committee. At the bottom, listed as non-essential allocation, phase 2. A name was in yellow. Angela Crockett, 68, Dallas region. Gasps of shock ran through the room. She sat there for 6 hours, Jasmine went on, not really breathing. Nobody touched her. Nobody made eye contact with her, because some machine determined she wasn't qualified. Trump grumbled once more. She's alive now. So what's the problem? Jasmine slowly turned, speaking softly, but with the edge of glass. She's alive because a doctor broke the rules. Your system punished him for it. If not, she would have died invisible on a list. She held the document up to the cameras. Tier 3, bolded, undeniable. Elon's lawyer scribbled angrily. Musk didn't lift his eyes. This is what your AI optimizes, she demanded. It didn't see a woman. It saw data. It didn't quantify humanity. It quantified risk and zeroed out the rest. Jasmine deposited the paper into the official record and stood before Musk. My mother was fortunate, but how many weren't? How many are quietly marked non-essential right now without ever being informed? She turned to the lens. What if someone you care about is already on that list and nobody informed you? The chamber went still. The paper glowed under the camera lights, red stamped, hidden before, now national. Jasmine picked it up slowly, not for effect, but to ensure no one would ever be able to look away. This is the Tier 3 allocation freeze memo, she stated. March 15th, 2021. Distributed throughout every Musk-owned hospital. On the wall behind her, a screen came to life. Internal policy, ventilator allocation phase 2. Freeze all non-tier 1 equipment distribution. A collective gasp. She went on without hesitation. It ordered staff not to give ventilators to patients labeled non-critical patients, who have limited economic value. She turned to page 2, 47 names, coded by initials, age, region, priority. She followed her finger with her finger, paused. Crockett, 68, Dallas. The quiet changed from shocked to wounded. Jasmine waved the page. Her voice didn't shake. This isn't about me, this is about us. Every waiting room in every family. Every mother who didn't have the proper insurance. Every father who wasn't economically viable to live. Trump gritted his jaw. Musk glared at the table. His attorney whispered once again. Silent still. Jasmine stepped forward. You want to know what this document fails to mention? She asked. Race, but look at the names. Rodriguez, Brown, Moen Johnson. They didn't have to say it. The system already knew. Camera zoomed in. Hashtag started trending in real time. Hashtag tier 3 is real. Hashtag let them breathe. The gallery changed. Some wept, Jasmine continued. This policy was not debated in Congress. It was not voted on. It was not reviewed by any ethics board. It was rammed quietly into hospitals by billionaires who believed they could determine who lives and dies. She addressed Musk. You call it innovation. I've called it murder by spreadsheet. Musk looked up for the first time, but only momentarily. Jasmine nodded again at the list. On this list are names that did not make it through. Not due to sickness. Due to the news in this paper instructed a person to walk around them. She stopped. And there are additional lists. We just haven't found them yet. Her voice fell, almost a whisper, but all mics picked it up. If my mother was dead, this would still be underground. They didn't try and silence me because I had a view. They tried and silenced me because I had evidence. She turned away from Trump and Musk toward the country. So tell me, if your name was on this list, would you have lived? That question. Naked and asphyxiating, clung to the air like smoke people couldn't breathe. Elon stood tall, addressing as if he was writing code, not punishments. We need to maximize productivity. Triage is about logic, not feeling. It's not a question of who gets to stay alive. It's survivability. It's mathematics. The word landed with the force of a curse. Jasmine didn't flinch. Math without morals, she continued, is genocide in a lab coat. The room went quiet. Musk blinked. Trump shifted uncomfortably. Jasmine pushed on, voice like icy water cradlement. You used an algorithm to play God with people's breath. Create element you. Made poverty a calculation. Create element illness. A margin error. Create element, and when the results got ugly, you buried the truth in code. Elon remained quiet, but his jaw flexed. Create element. That's when Marjorie Taylor Greene slammed her mic button. Madam Chair, this is defamatory. Undefined, these words are dangerous. Undefined. Jasmine did not turn to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She didn't need to. Her response was subdued but biting enough to quiet the room. You're defending a system that allows one person's mother to die in a hallway, and you want to discuss danger? MTG attempted again, shouting louder. Jasmine merely held up her hand not to debate, but to shut down the circus. I'll yield the floor, she said quietly, then looked into the camera. First, do no harm. The words dropped like a gavel, final and cutting. A beat of stillness followed. That oath, she continued, wasn't written for software. It was written for people. But in your hospitals, Mr. Musk, that promise was overwritten by profit margins. Elon opened his mouth, then thought better of it. Jasmine pushed forward. You say it's math, but math didn't see Angela Crockett. Or Chloe Jackson's mother. Or the Vietnam vet marked Tier 3 because he couldn't hold a desk job. Trump scoffed, but no one followed him. Even Fox News kept the camera trained on Jasmine. This country wasn't built by spreadsheets, she said. It was constructed by human hands holding each other up when all else fails. Elon had at last answered, voice cut short and defensive. I made choices based on survival rates, not emotion. Jasmine's head twitched slightly. No, she said, voice icy. You made choices based on finances? And when the numbers told you someone wasn't worth saving, you concurred? The room hung there? Viewers in the living room leaned in? She addressed the committee, then the media, then the public. So here's the question. When did we begin allowing billionaires to determine who can breathe and who can't? Nobody knew. Then Jasmine turned, voice firm, serious. Madam Chair, I would like to call Dr. Luis Morales to the stand. From the stand stood up a man in his late 50s, stethoscope around his neck, blazer worn, a life of trenches etched on his face. He did not smile, but simply took the oath and sat with the quiet seriousness of someone who has seen far too much. Dr. Morales, Jasmine inquired, were you the supervising EA physician on March 28th, 2021? He nodded. And did you see Angela Crockett that night? Yes, he replied, but not because I was instructed to. Because I chose not to do what that paper instructed me to do. Murmurs crisscrossed the room. Jasmine set down the now familiar document, the Tier 3 allocation freeze. This policy instructed physicians to withhold ventilators from non-essential patients. My mother, Angela Crockett, was one such name, wasn't she? Morales gazed at the page, his face twisted in a sour smile. She was. Too old. No insurance. Wrong. Population. Elon sat blankly. Trump quivered. Jasmine's tone gentled. What did you do when you saw her anyway? They summoned me, Morales replied. Told me if I ever overrode the algorithm again, I'd lose my badge. No second warning. Duh. Silence was oppressive. I saved her because I knew her, he went on. But I've followed that policy before. I've walked away from people I knew I could have helped because the system said no. And I've lived with it each day since. Jasmine's eyes didn't burn hot with rage, they burned with sorrow honed to a razor. How many others weren't so fortunate as to have you that night? She inquired. Morales swallowed hard. I lost count, he whispered. But they're with me, each shift. Jasmine turned away from the chamber. If my mom lived only because one guy defied the rules, how many others did not make it because no one did? That statement fell like lead and nothing, not even air, stirred. Then Jasmine pulled out of her folder a tiny flash drive and walked it to the clerk. In a matter of seconds, the overhead screen flickered to life. The lights dimmed. All the cameras swiveled up. A video started. A young black woman in a still room, red-rimmed eyes, shaking voice. Her name flashed on screen. Chloe Jackson, daughter of Marlene Jackson, dead Tier 3 patient. My mom was not ill, Chloe explained. Just short of breath. We called 911. They brought her in. She nodded her hands. They said, wait. Just wait. The gallery came to a standstill. Elon did not blink. 3 hours, Chloe explained. My mom slumped in a wheelchair, hardly aware. I pleaded with someone to assist. They said she was flagged Tier 3, not necessary. There was a higher priority. Case ahead, her voice trembled. She died before anyone touched her. A soft gasp escaped the room. A staffer wiped his eyes. The screen faded to black. Then Chloe's voice came through again. She didn't die from the virus. She died from invisibility. The lights illuminated, but the chamber did not shift. Jasmine remained stationary, gaze fixed on the screen even after it dissolved. In front of her, Trump smirked. People die every day, he grumbled, sweeping his hand through the air. A contemptuous ripple spread over the room. Did he just say that? A reporter breathed. Jasmine turned. Tone low. Clipped. Yes, Mr. Trump. People die every day, but not all of them wait to die for a billionaire's algorithm to grant them the right to live. Trump did not respond, but his jaw did twitch. Jasmine nodded toward the screen. That girl waited 3 hours next to her. Mother. Not because care was unavailable, but because someone chose she wasn't high enough on the list. Jasmine moved closer now, voice cold as a razor. This is not tragedy alone. This is policy. It's what you get when medicine becomes a business plan and kindness is substituted for code. She waited. Let the quiet permeate every corner of the chamber. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or just exhausted. If you've ever been by someone you love, praying they'd be heard, Chloe's tale is yours too. She looked at the people at home. How many mothers died waiting, just so someone else could meet a quarterly target? No one caught their breath. And then, at last, Jasmine stood in front of Donald Trump. Her voice was a whisper, like a knife going home into. It's Sheath. He said that people die every day. Like she was just another body on a spreadsheet. Her voice cut. To you, she was a statistic, but to her family, she was the reason to keep breathing. And that was it. The murmur grew, then broke into full applause. Jasmine didn't even glance at her. She didn't need to. Her response cut through the tension without needing to raise her voice. You defend a system that allows someone's mother to die in a hallway, and you want to discuss danger? TG tried to escalate, louder now, but Jasmine simply lifted her hand not to argue, but to silence the chaos. Then, with surgical calm, she addressed the room. I'll yield the floor. She stared straight into the camera. First, do no harm. The phrase landed with the weight of a gavel. Everything stilled. She let it settle before pressing. That oath wasn't written for machines. It was intended for humans. But in your hospitals, Mr. Musk, that promise was substituted with profit margins. Elon Musk opened his mouth, then closed it once more. Jasmine didn't relent. You characterize it as just mathematics. But mathematics did not witness Angela Crockett or Chloe Jackson's mom, or a veteran who was considered tier 3 because he couldn't sit in front of a desk. Trump laughed, but nobody else did. Even Fox News maintained its focus on Jasmine. This country wasn't built by spreadsheets, she went on. It was built by human hands holding each other up when all else fell apart. Elon replied, voice tight. I made decisions on survival rates, not emotion. Jasmine shook her head, icy as steel. No, you made decisions on money. When the algorithm declared someone not worth saving, you agreed. The room came to a stop. Back in the house, millions leaned in. She gazed across the room and declared slowly, so ask yourself, when did we start letting billionaires tell us who gets to breathe? No one could come up with an answer. Jasmine turned to the chair. I called Dr. Elise Morales. A man in frayed scrubs and a faded jacket rose and affirmed the oath like truth-telling was routine, but never without effort. Were you the resident EE physician at Dallas County Medical on the evening of March 28, 2021? Yes, Morales answered. And did you have anything to do with Angela Crockett? Yes, he answered, but not at someone's behest. Because I refused to follow that policy. Murmurs erupted. Jasmine put down the policy document. A tier 3 allocation freeze. Angela Crockett, my mother, was one of the names on that list, wasn't she? Morales flashed a bitter smile. She was! Too old, not insured, and not in the priority group. Elon remained stone-faced. Trump shifted, jaw clenched. What did you do when you treated her anyway? Jasmine asked. Morales replied, I was warned. Told if I overrode the system again, I'd lose my badge. No second chances. The room was quiet. I saved her, Morales said, because I knew who she was. But I followed that policy before. I've walked away from breathing, living people, because some systems said they didn't qualify. And I've lived with that. Jasmine's voice fell, steady with sorrow. How many others weren't as lucky as my mother? Morales paused. I stopped counting, but I see their faces every day. Jasmine addressed the audience now. If my mother lived because one man disobeyed, the rules, how many others died because nobody did? Then she held up a tiny flash drive. This, she told him, is the tale that never found its way into the record until today. She dropped it into his hands. The lights went down. A video started. On screen sat a young black woman, her voice already shaky. Chloe Jackson, the caption stated, daughter of Marlene Jackson, tier 3 patient. My mom wasn't ill, she stated. Just having some trouble breathing. We called 911. Her hands writhed. We were told to wait. 3 hours. Her voice broke. She died in that wheelchair before anyone had even touched her. A hush of shock passed through the room. The screen went dark. Then Chloe's last words came. Back. She didn't die from the virus. She died from being invisible. The lights came back on. The silence lingered. Jasmine was still frozen, her eyes still on the screen. Trump's voice shattered the silence with a derisive snort. People die every day. Head swiveled. Undefined, one reporter whispered. Did he just say that? Undefined. Jasmine turned, gaze fixed on Trump. Undefined. Yes, people die every day. Undefined, but not everybody dies waiting for a billionaire's algorithm to decide it's okay to live. Trump didn't answer. Undefined. Jasmine gestured toward the screen. That young woman sat by her mother for 3 hours, not because the hospital was full, but because someone decided she wasn't worth saving. Her tone turned sharp. Undefined. This isn't just a tragedy. Undefined it. Single quotes S policy. Undefined it. S what happens when compassion is replaced by code and healthcare becomes a business plan. She paused to let it hit. Undefined. Republican, Democrat, Independent. It doesn't matter. If you've ever watched someone you love go unseen, then Chloe's story is yours too. She asked, not to Trump, not to Musk, but to the nation. How many mothers had to die waiting just so someone else could hit a quarterly target? Undefined. No one dared breathe. Undefined. And then Jasmine turned to Trump again. Gaze unshaken. Undefined. You said people die every day. She echoed. Undefined. Like, it's just a line on a report. But to her family, she was everything. The room burst out, not with protest, but applause. Jasmine snapped open the binder to a red tabbed page, clause 9.4. She read, her voice calm. The foundation had the right to reallocate any medical device, including ventilators, according to regional economic optimization models in real time. No gasps echoed. The air was just smothered with silence. Moving closer, binder still open, she let the hammer fall. They hadn't rationed by urgency. They'd rationed by zip code, income, and profitability. Ventilators didn't go where they were needed most. They went where they generated the most profit. Musk glanced visibly uncomfortable for the first time. Jasmine held up the contract. You know what that clause is? She asked, staring. A child in Beverly Hills with a slight cough had better chances than an old soldier in East St. Louis struggling for oxygen. This wasn't medicine, it was profit-driven inventory management. She set the binder down with a crash like a gavel. You didn't just sign this, Mr. Musk. You benefited from it, and you relied on no one reading the small print. Clause 9.4 was already going viral, screenshots flickering through social feeds. Jasmine leaned forward. You didn't just deny ventilators, you sold breath to the highest. Bitter, she addressed the camera, now speaking to a nation. Ask yourself, how much would your life be worth if someone like him was doing the math? The room stilled, the chilly reality sinking in. She didn't blink. She stood facing Musk as the contract radiated behind her like a wound carved into policy. Did you sign this on February 3rd, 2021? She pressed. Yes, he grumbled. But Jasmine interrupted. Did you approve a model that redistributed life-saving devices based on profit? Another pause. Yes. And then, quietly, she delivered the coup de grace. You didn't create a system to save lives. You created an algorithm to sort them for slaughter. The words hurt. You made ventilators luxury items. You wrote discrimination into code. Even Trump flinched. When he somehow managed to mumble, God, you're emotional, Jasmine slowly swiveled around, unwavering as ever. I'm not emotional. I'm awake. Her reality stabbed harder than any headline. She went on, you see? Women talk with authority and label it emotion. You see sorrow and label it weakness. But I see truth, and truth doesn't care if it's painful. She named names. Chloe Jackson, Howard Jenkins' lives that might have been saved, but were reduced to rows in a spreadsheet. You labeled that innovation. She said, label it what it is, a business model for selective survival. The room fell silent. Outside, the demonstration had swelled. Nurses, vets, teachers, all walking with signs that read, let them breathe. Jasmine stood in front of the exit, observing a live stream of the crowd rising like a tsunami. Then her aide gave her a flash drive. It contained a tape from an inside former contractor on Musk's medical board. The opposition tried to shut it down. Jasmine answered, cutting through their alarm. They're not censoring it because it's not true. They're censoring it because it's true. She indicated to the technician. The video ran. In grainy video, executives matter-of-factly spoke of rolling back ventilators. Prioritize white-collar survival. Medicare goes tier 2. Low-income patients look. They're not stockholders. The air was sucked out of the room. Jasmine? Advanced. That's what they thought of your grandparents, your neighbors, just numbers. And if your number didn't increase theirs, you didn't deserve to live. She shifted her attention to Elon, his jaw locked, silent in a stony stare. You left your payroll managers determined the poor were unimportant? She addressed the camera once more. If you've ever had trouble paying a hospital bill, delayed. Here, just know your survival was never the goal. Trump slammed his hand on the desk, insisting that the feed be terminated. But the chairwoman refused. The American people deserve to hear what billionaires say when no one's listening. Behind Jasmine, the screen froze on the phrase, low-income patients. Look, they're not shareholders. Elon sat motionless, sweat catching the light. A PR whisper. We're cooked. Jasmine rose slowly. I've listened to excuses dressed as innovation, watched men escape responsibility as families buried their loved ones. She addressed the giants in the room. You don't get to algorithm away your conscience. This isn't tech, it's humanity. And if you can't see that, you don't belong in the business of saving lives. The camera captured Elon's sweat, Trump's shame. You built empires off our desperation. Sold hope like a product. Now that the curtain's pulled back, you say it's too messy to look at, but the people who died under your policies didn't get to look away. I wouldn't either. And neither should anyone who is watching. In that instant, it wasn't a hearing. It was history unrolling, raw, unedited, irretrievable. By the time it was over, her last words were already viral. Twitter couldn't keep up. Hashtags such as hashtag algorithm of death, hashtag not shareholders, and hashtag Crockett Truth topped the trending lists in a dozen nations. On TikTok, Jasmine's voice rang out over slow motion video of old vets' funerals and packed hospital waiting rooms that never received a second chance. CNN's anchor abandoned her teleprompter in mid-broadcast. This isn't just a hearing, it's a national rupture. MSNBC cycled the images repeatedly. Even Fox News couldn't spin it, cutting to commercial twice before playing a quiet segment on Elon's childhood. Silence yelled louder. As the sun went down, murals emerged in Oakland and Dallas. In the Bronx, Jasmine's monochrome face halted mid-sentence under the ghostly words. You don't get to algorithm away your conscience. In front of Capitol Hill, the march expanded. Families stood holding photographs. Retired nurses held up letters of resignation. Veterans gathered before a canvas sprayed with red. Tell them I served. Ask if that was enough. Within the chamber, the air weighed down upon them as if the sky had bent itself. Jasmine remained standing, paper clutched in her hand, yet words weren't necessary. Her tone never increased. This bill, she stated, isn't charity. It's oxygen for all without a VIP pass to live. The Emergency Public Medical Access Act, 12 pages. One promise, no public hospital ever again would refuse life or death treatment based on income or an algorithm. Silence reigned until Republican veteran Congressman Adler stood. I buried my sister last year. Her name was never on the list. I vote yes. The chamber changed. Another rose, and another. Party lines were broken. Trump's voice boomed. This is socialism, pure theater. Nobody blinked, not even Marjorie Taylor Greene. Musk looked at his hands. Jasmine turned to the cameras, calm and direct. If it saves one life, I'll take the theater. The vote lit up green, red, yellow. 231 to 204. Motion passed. Applause broke protocol. Reporters scrambled. But Jasmine didn't smile. She only whispered, finally. Breath is not for sale. That night, in a quiet living room, her mother watched from a recliner. Oxygen humming beside her like a tired guardian. Tubes covered her face, yet her eyes remained steady. On camera, Jasmine stood upright, unmoving. Her mother grasped her. Daughter's hand. You got them to listen, baby. Jasmine gripped it. We reminded them. The forgotten Chloe Jackson, Howard Jenkins were no longer data points. They were human beings. They labeled it optimization, Jasmine stated. But it was elimination, and tonight, it stopped. Protesters chanted in the street. Musk's lawyers were mobbed. Trump had stormed off, but none of it was more important. Then, that instant, on the couch, Jasmine and her mother clasping hands. You didn't just talk for me, her mother whispered. You breathed life into the voiceless. And that breath, more than going viral or trending on social media, rang across the country. Later, Jasmine stood before one final camera still streaming. Live. She didn't flinch. Every breath is a story, she said. Not a budget line, not data, a story. Ensure yours is heard even when they don't want to hear it. And with one last question, she cut through the din. Have you ever seen someone you love told their life wasn't worth saving? No music, no banner, just truth. And it hit in living rooms, break rooms, nursing stations. She didn't ask a question. She rekindled a nation's spirit. Her dying words were gentle, but indelible. Sometimes justice doesn't shout, it breathes. And when enough of us breathe together, systems fall. Humanity rises. If reading this moved, you don't scroll on. Like, comment, subscribe to Mr. Truth Stories. Where every breath counts, ring the bell for the next truth. It could be the one you've been waiting for, blank. Which moment struck you the hardest? Blank, leave it in the comments, blank. Let someone know they're not alone. Blank. Let single quotes remember out loud.